Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Friday, July 2nd. We're breaking down this massive 14 game slate that we have over on DraftKings today, and we're just one game shy of having the full-on 15 gamer that we see here and there on Fridays, but nothing to complain about. 14 games, 28 teams, lots to break down here. Good pitching options, good offensive pieces. We're back in Coors Field. We got the Rockies versus the Cardinals. It's a pretty loaded slate. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are as well, but you probably wouldn't be on this video right about now. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I don't just cover baseball, I do NFL once that season begins, and I do NASCAR each and every single weekend with live streams. So if you're brand new to the channel and you think you'll become a frequent visitor, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. If you don't follow me over on social media, you can do so using the handles in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below in the description for that, right beside the orange bubble. But you get access to a lot of extra content, including projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Everything is updated throughout the day. You can find that in the link down below. And it's the beginning of the month, so it's still the best time to sign up for your best bang for your buck. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we'll start with the pitchers, then move on to the bats. And really, outside of Max Scherzer and Lance Lynn, my plan for tonight's slate is probably just to double spend it for pitcher, because I don't know if you guys have noticed this season, but it's been way too easy to do that. Like even last night, we had Coors Field. I could do a full-on Cardinal stack, and I could even do a Rocky stack, and I could still fit in Jacob Degrom and Corbin Burns last night. And those were the two pitchers you pretty much wanted for the most part. It's what you did in cash games. It's what everyone did. They were way above 50% on if you were playing cash, and I know Jacob Degrom gave us a scare last night early on where he gave up 3 runs, but he ended up with 14 strikeouts just doing typical GOAT stuff. But anyway, it's just been way too easy to double spend it for a pitcher this season. I feel like in the past, it was a lot harder and you really limited your lineup offensively. But so far this season, I've just noticed that the offensive pieces this year, especially even when they're in good spots, they're just not priced up enough to where you really have to make tough decisions at pitcher. Yes, there's some slates where we do spend down for pitcher a little bit. It's a little bit tougher, but I'm not thinking this is going to be one of those slates. Like I was even playing around with it. The Cardinals are cheap again. They got a great spot versus Chichi Gonzalez. So if you want to double spend up tonight, I'm thinking that's probably the best way to do so, especially if you are playing cash games. Now, I am recording this video the night before the slate starts. It's not even 12 a.m. yet, so I could obviously change my mind a little bit, but my assumption is roster construction-wise, it should not be too hard to fit in Max Scherzer and Lance Lynn. Ahead of myself, we'll start up top with the ace of the slate, Max Scherzer, $10,500, and he gets a tough matchup here versus the LA Dodgers, but any single time we have an elite level pitcher like Max Scherzer, like Jacob Degrom, like, well, I guess Garrett Cole's still an elite pitcher, but I don't know, it's not without the sticky stuff. I would say he's definitely a tick down from Max Scherzer, but I mean, he's been awesome this season, and any single time we get a pitcher like that facing a tough matchup, always going to give the edge to a guy like Max Scherzer just because he can overpower any single offensive lineup that he does face, and I think that's what we're going to see here versus the Dodgers. Now, he's not going to have as good of a projection as he would if he was facing a team like Miami or Detroit or something like that, but still raw points-wise, he's going to be our top play on the slate. A very respectable 3.6 implied team total versus him, because when you're facing the Dodgers, if they have a 3.6 implied team total, that's how you know you're getting a lot of respect out of Vegas. 7.5 K prop. His numbers on the season have been fantastic, around 100 pitches per game, a beautiful 2.1 ERA, 3.2 xFIP, which is about a run higher. Sierra's at 2.8, but still those are really good numbers. 35.5% carry, doesn't really walk too many guys. I know the one issue in the past for Max Scherzer has always been giving up lefty power, but the thing is, it's kind of flip-flopped this year. Like versus lefties, he's allowing less than a 100 ISO, but to righties, he's allowing over a 200 ISO, which does concern me a little bit for a guy like maybe Mookie Betts, Justin Turner, Will Smith, who have plenty of power. So maybe they get a solo shot off of him, but either way, the strikeouts should be there. And again, matchup kind of sucks, but raw points-wise, Max Scherzer is definitely our top play on the entire slate. He's not overly expensive, and you should be able to fit him in if you want to build your lineups around him. It should not be a problem tonight. Lance Lynn, $9,700. He gets a really soft matchup versus Detroit, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum here for Max Scherzer, where he faces the Dodgers. Lance Lynn gets one of the softest matchups in the league versus the Detroit Tigers. The team total is a little bit higher than I thought it would be at 3.78, but still a decent favorite, and his numbers this season are pretty good. They're not quite like Max Scherzer. The ERA is actually lower, but he's getting a little bit lucky considering the xFIP and Sierra about 1.5 to 2 runs higher, but still has around a 28.5% K rate, doesn't give up much power, doesn't really allow much hard contact whatsoever, less than a homer per 9. And the Tigers, Versus righties, I mean, they're just pretty pedestrian for the most part. They're worse versus lefties, but versus righties, 26.5% K rate, 91 WRC plus, 306 OBP, 304 WOBA, 156 ISO. I mean, it's nothing too intimidating here. So Lance Lynn should be just fine. 9,700 bucks. I would not be surprised if you can get us 20 plus points here, which you will take below $10,000. And if you can fit both these guys in cash games, I would feel pretty good about that, and it really shouldn't break the bank. Kind of similar to Corbin Burns and not Max Scherzer, Jacob Degrom last night. We're kind of in a similar, when you combine their price tag, similar price range, because I think Burns was 9,200 and Jacob Degrom was 11,500. So kind of like in a similar price range there, and you could still pretty much play whoever you wanted on offense as long as you've got a couple of cheap pieces, which every single night there's some good cheap pieces, which you will see when we go over the bats. And then some kind of fringe plays here, like I'm probably just playing Scherzer and Lance Lynn. So these guys are kind of on the fringe for making the cut for me, but if you are building multiple lineups, I could see them making their way into a few of them. Alex Wood here, 8,500 bucks, gets a pretty soft matchup overall versus the Diamondbacks. I'd prefer if it was at home in San Francisco. Definitely a pitcher-friendly park there. A park downgrade going to Arizona. Plus, they haven't been awful versus lefties this season. But with Ketel Marte out of the lineup, that definitely helps things a little bit. And as you're going to see, versus lefties, they really haven't been that bad. 173 ISO, 103 WRC+, 322 WOBA, 21.4% K rate. But Alex Wood's just been overall solid this season. I wouldn't say he's been elite. I wouldn't say he's been bad. So that's why he's priced right in this fine pitcher range at 8,500 bucks, around a 25% K rate. Not walking a ton of guys. We'll give up a little bit of power, but just get a lot of ground balls, on a ton of hard contact. I believe around a homer per 9 this season, 3.69 Sierra, 3.6 xFIP. Just a fine overall solid pitcher, but fair price point of 8,500 bucks. Sonny Gray, $7,500. If Sonny Gray wasn't potentially going to be on a pitch count coming right off the IL, I mean, he could honestly be around $95,000 to $10,000, and I wouldn't bat an eye. So at 7,500 bucks, I think he's a good play. And even if we can only get like 70 to 80 pitches out of him, he's at enough of a discount where I think he is playable. But in cash games, I just want the guys that can go deep into games. And I'm not really sure we're going to get that out of Sonny Gray tonight. Now, if there's news that breaks that he's not going to be on a pitch count, he is good to go. We could see like 90 to 100 pitches. Yeah, sign me up for Sonny Gray all day at $7,500. It's a good matchup versus the Cubs. The park sucks for pitching. Great American Small Park. It's kind of like mini cores out there. And the Cubs do have a little bit of power versus righties. They're on a 170 team ISO this season, but they're still striking out around a 26.5% clip. And there's a lot of easy strikeouts in that lineup. Now, there is power, but a lot of strikeouts. And Sonny Gray is a guy that has around a 30% K rate this season, which does hold up in the past. Around 3.3 xFIP, over 11 Ks per 9. The walks are a bit of an issue, around a 10% walk rate, but I mean, 7,500 bucks. Even if we can only get like 70, 80 pitches, that's at that price point, where he should be like $2,000 more expensive, I think he's in play. We just gotta have to keep our eyes and ears peeled for some news on what that pitch count's going to be potentially. Then Logan Gilbert, 6,600 bucks, pretty new pitcher. So I mean, the numbers aren't a big sample size. We don't have much data to look off of, but I think he's gonna be a decent pitcher in the future. And even then, this season he hasn't been that bad. The ERA is at 4.2, but the xFIP's at 4.1. Sierra's below 4, 26.2% K rate. Only a 5% walk rate. He's giving up a lot of fly balls, though, and the power's at nearly 200. But the matchup versus Texas, it's pretty soft overall, and I like that price point. So if you're really trying to load up on your bats tonight, trying to fit in guys like Arenado, Goldschmidt, and really just full-on stacking a lot of good offensive teams today, you might have to venture down to the Logan Gilbert range, but it's 6,600 bucks. I mean, I feel like he should probably be around mid 7K range. So the fact that we're getting below that in a good matchup versus Texas, I think makes me feel a little bit comfortable with them. So if you really need to save down for pitcher today, I think Logan Gilbert does make some sense there, and the guy's numbers really aren't terrible in 36 innings pitched this season, only a 4 implied team total against him as well, and which is kind of right on par with Alex Wood and a little bit lower than Sonny Gray tonight, and not really even that too far off of Lance Lynn either. But with that being said, guys, that'll be it for the pitching, so let's move right on to the bats. And as I was mentioning earlier, I think the offensive pieces are pretty fun tonight, so I'm looking forward to this part. But anyway, let's start up top with the catcher position. And we have Salvi Perez, 5,100 bucks. Very expensive, not a necessity in cash games by any means at that price point. Plus the Royals, they're in a very good spot, but I wouldn't say they're the best stack on the slate. But they get a very good matchup, especially the righties. They get a very good matchup versus the soft-tossing lefty J. Happ, who really isn't that great of a pitcher, and he gives up a ton of power versus right-handed bats. We're talking around a 300 ISO. Close to a 400 WOBA, around 2 homers per 9. Just not a very good pitcher, especially versus right-handed bats. And Salvador Perez, One of the better hitting catchers in baseball, batting around 280 with around a 236 ISO this season, 351 WOBA, 122 WRC plus, and around an 830 OPS. Doesn't really walk much and will strike out quite a bit, but don't really think we have to worry about that too much with J.A. Happ. They have a team total above 5 here. They're definitely not going to be as popular as the Cardinals. Probably won't be as popular as the Angels or the Rockies. So if you're looking for some leverage tonight, I think if you can get the Royals at lower ownership versus a guy like J.A. Happ, you'll be looking pretty good in tournaments. You got here Molina, $4,500. You're going to see a common theme here. If you're on the Cardinals, I have plenty of interest in you. Chichi Gonzalez is not a very good pitcher at all, and that's probably even selling it a little bit short. The guy is average at very best, but pretty much a below average pitcher, like very below average pitcher. There's a reason they have a team total of around 6 today, and if they can get the Chichi Gonzalez early on, the Rockies bullpen is not very good whatsoever, so you can sign me up for the Cardinals here. Molina, he's got a little bit of pop in his bat, 168 ISO this season, but I'm just trying to get exposure to the Cardinals here. Then Max Stassi, $4,300, good matchup here for the Angels versus Keegan Aiken. Yes, I'd prefer if they were on the road in Camden Yards, but Los Angeles hasn't been a bad place to hit this season. Like, it's not been a bad hitter's park whatsoever. And Stassi's been good this year, batting 300, 387 WOBA, 218 ISO, 140 on WRC plus with a near 400 OBP. Strikes out quite a bit, but nice righty on lefty matchup here for Stassi versus Keegan Aiken. And plus, the Orioles bullpen's not that great either. Dropping out of first base, Shohei Ohtani, $5,900. I'd prefer if he was facing a righty, but I can't imagine Keegan Aiken's going to pitch too deep into this game. And at some point, he will see a righty, but it's not like Shohei Ohtani can't hit lefties either. I mean, he's got plenty of power versus them this season. On the year versus lefties, a 390 ISO with the 646 slugging. Strikes out around a 30% clip, but I mean, the numbers are still overall elite. The batting average drops off a little bit, but like ISO-wise, he's actually had a higher ISO versus lefties this season than he has versus righties. But anytime you can play Ohtani, you can do so. Also eligible in the outfield, and if you are stacking the Angels, it's impossible to leave off their best hitter, pretty much the best player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani. Paul Goldschmidt, $4,800. Looking like a cash game staple for me. I'm not seeing any really cheap first baseman that stand out too much to me, so I'm probably going to try to find a way to play Paul Goldschmidt. $400. He went deep last night. I know his numbers aren't super exciting on the season, but again, give me all the Cardinals versus Chichi. And then Joey Votto, $4,200. Kind of a fringe play for me here, but I do think the Reds make for a decent contrarian stack. They're playing in a very hitter-friendly park at home in Cincinnati, Great American Small Park. They don't call it that for a reason. Alex Mills is kind of just a so-so pitcher, lefty-on-righty matchup here versus him. I think the lefties do grade out pretty well here, and I think the team total is fine. Joey Votto, fine hitter at this point of his career, 182 ISO this season. The batting average is pretty low, but we know the guy knows how to get on base. If you are stacking the Reds, I think he makes sense in tournaments. Going down to second base, we have Ryan McMahon. You can also play him at third base, but tons of power this season. Doesn't hit for that high of a batting average, and he will strike out quite a bit, but does have a 245 ISO, and I want pretty much all of this game. The Rockies are a great player versus St. Louis, and similar to St. Louis going up against the Rockies, the St. Louis bullpen's not very good either, so if they can get the starting pitcher out of the way early on, their team exits around 4.9 for their bullpen this season, so yeah, 4.9, the Rockies are at 4.76, so two not very good bullpens. So if they can get the starters out early on, it's probably only going to get even better for them, so definitely like both sides of this game quite a bit, like the power upside for Ryan McMahon. Tommy Edman on the opposite side of this game, $4,600. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but just give me all the pieces of this game if I can fit them in. Then David Fletcher, I could see him being decently popular in cash games. Should be leading off here for the Angels, $3,200. Team total above 5. Good matchup versus Keegan Aiken. Kind of a high batting average guy. Won't have any power whatsoever, but knows how to make contact, and that's really all you can ask for at that price point of $3,200. Going down to third base, Nolan Arenado, $5,800. Back in his home field where he played for quite some time. Coors Field, no stranger to the stadium. I mean, he's expensive, yeah, but I mean, the power's been there this year. The slugging's pretty good. The batting average is respectable at 270. I mean, I feel like we would have expected a drop off a little bit going from Coors Field at home. So, but now that he's back in Coors, I love all the Cardinals plays here, and you really can't go wrong with any of these guys. Anthony Rendon, $4,700. Just more righties here versus Keegan Aiken, like all the Angels tonight for the most part. Then if you're looking for a cheaper option, he's also eligible in the outfield, no longer at second base, but Arraez here, $3,800. Should be leading off here versus Brady Singer. Not a big power guy, less than a 100 ISO this season, but he will hit for a decently high batting average, around 300 this season. The numbers obviously overall better versus righties. And Singer, while he's not a terrible pitcher, he's not that great, and the Twins do have a team total close to 5 here. I don't have a lot of these lefties listed. I actually only have Arraez, but you could always play Max Kepler, Larnack. I mean, those guys are viable. You can play the righties too, like Nelson Cruz and Josh Donaldson, but I really only have much interest in the lefties here. Then going to shortstop, Trevor Story, $5,800 if you can afford him. Coors Field, team total above 6 here. He's got power versus righties and lefties. Not a very good pitcher for the Cardinals. Bullpen's not that great. I mean, I like all of Coors Field today. Carlos Correa, $5,200. We have not talked about one Astro today. That's just to go. That just kind of shows exactly how good the batting slate is today, because typically, if we had the Astros versus a very below-average lefty and Sam Henches, I mean, they're going to be one of the top stacks on the slate because they've been crushing lefties this year. Yuli Gurriel, Carlos Correa, even Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker are fine versus lefties. I prefer them versus righties, but you can still play them. Jose Altuve, have Alex Bregman, but these guys are in a good spot. Team total around 5.5 here. I feel like it's even a little bit too low. I think it could get closer to 6 as the time first pitch happens, but Carlos Correa has been great this year. Batting 305, 402 WOBA, 235 ISO. If you want to get really contrarian, I think the Astros do make some sense because they're in a good spot and not really scared of the pitcher that's on the mound for Cleveland tonight. So do think the Astros make for a good contrarian stack in tournaments. Don't think I'm going to get to any of them in cash games, but in tournaments they do make some sense. Then Paul DeJong is $3,400. If you're not playing Trevor Story, just spend down for Paul DeJong in cash games. Yeah, Correa's a fine tournament play, but if you're playing cash games, either play Story or DeJong. I don't see a reason to go elsewhere. At $3,400, he'll probably be the guy you fit in if you are double spending up for a pitcher. The guy has a terrible batting average, but he does have a little bit of pop in his bat, so that's the one upside for him. He's also dirt cheap. Team total close to 6 here. Just give me all the Cardinals. Dropping down to the outfield, we have Charlie Blackmon, $5,500. Just Rockies here versus the Cardinals. Lefty and righty matchup. Jesse Winker, $5,100. Part of that contrarian Cincinnati stack that I think does look pretty strong today. He's a little expensive, yes, but the guy has been insanely elite versus right-handed pitching this season. His numbers are crazy. 467 WOBA, 328 ISO, 197 WRC+, 686 slugging, over a 400 OBP, 1100 OPS, only a 15% K rate, which is pretty good when you have all that power, and a 358 batting average. So Jesse Winker, if you got the money for him, if you're stacking the Reds, he's a fantastic play and does grade out very well. Raymond Tapia, $4,400. We have a run of Coors Field guys in Tapia, O'Neill, and Carlson. I'm not sure I really even have to go over these guys individually. Just know they're in Coors Field and they're all great plays. Although I will say Tyler O'Neill does grade out the best for me, and he's kind of a cash game lock. I think he had 8 points last time I looked last night. Didn't really have the greatest of games in the world, but the guy has a good amount of power. He's way too cheap for betting cleanup for pretty much the top offense on the slate, unless you guys want to say the Rockies are the top offense. I think those are interchangeable, but you get the guaranteed 9th inning at bats on the road here for the Cardinals. And O'Neill, guy with around a 300 ISO this season, 373 WOBA, batting cleanup only $4,100. He's pretty much my favorite play on the entire slate. Obviously, Dylan Carlson leading off, so obviously a fine play too. But all three of these guys are all elite plays if they happen to make the lineup. Because I know Tapia did not make the lineup last night. We saw Garrett Hampson leading off, but assuming Tapia is back, obviously an elite play. Jorge Soler, $3,400, just cheap righty power here versus Happ. I think we already went over that. Tyler Naquin, just some lefty power here versus Mills. He's kind of like the great value brand version of Jesse Winker. Not quite as good, but he has had some decent power versus right-handed pitching this season. Then Jonathan Daza, $3,300, just kind of a cheap Rockies guy. High batting average this season, not a lot of power. Less than a 100 ISO this season, but batting 330, 373 OBP. And for the price tag, I think he's fine if you just want a cheap exposure to a team with a team total above 6 as of right now. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me over on social media if you feel like that's something you want to do. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. Just look for the orange bubble. But you got projections, the optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Link is down below if you do want to join the community. But I'm going to stop rambling. Have a fantastic day. Hopefully the weather is wonderful wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video.